Hello and welcome back to video classes by Konnur English Medium School. In the last session we were talking about how Nagendra helped Babu, the boy, the son of Mr. Gupta, the merchant of the town, in getting out of trouble with the king and the queens. Now this boy, Babu, is very impressed with Nagendra's wisdom, and he is going to tell everybody about Nagendra and about his wisdom. So very soon Nagendra's name became a buzzword. So everybody was talking about Nagendra, right? So we stopped at this point in the story in the last video class. So we will continue from paragraph number 10. Now Gupta was not pleased. He saw that his son would have to feign madness always, or else the king would find out he had been tricked. Now the trouble for Babu was not yet over. Nagendra had helped him, of course, to get out of that trouble, but that was only temporarily, because what had Babu done to get out of that trouble? He had feigned madness. That means he had pretended to be an insane boy, a boy with mental illness, right? Now that is exactly why he had managed to get out of that trouble. So the king was not forcing him to be the witness just because he had realized that the boy had some sort of mental disability. But now what? Babu has to always pretend to be insane, mentally ill, when he is out of his house, when he is in the public. Because otherwise somebody is going to notice it from the royal family, and then they are going to go back to the king and tell, you know what, this boy actually fooled you, Your Honor. He actually is not insane, he is perfectly normal. And then the king would be very angry, right? So it's not yet over for Babu with that, witness thing. And Mr. Gupta, Babu's father, is quite aware of this. Even though the wisdom helped Babu to get out of it, it was temporary. And Gupta had to do something about it, otherwise very soon the king would have Babu arrested and he would be given a very severe punishment. He would certainly chop off his son's head if he found out. Well, the Supreme King will not hesitate to chop off the boy's head if he realized that this kid actually fooled him by playing some silly trick on him. So he would be very angry. So back they went to Nagendra for more wisdom. What choice did Gupta and his son have? They had to go back to Nagendra asking for help again. Well, for another 500 rupees, Nagendra advised them this way. Go back to the king when he is in a good mood and tell him the whole story. He will find it amusing and he will forgive you. But make sure he is in a good mood of laughter. And so Babu followed the advice. So they go back to Nagendra, they pay him 500 more, and then they get another piece of advice from Nagendra. And this time Nagendra said, well, it's very simple. Well, find out when the king is in a merry mood, when he's in a happy mood, when he's in a mood for jokes and laughter. If you find out when he is in a mood like that, you can go and talk to him. He is telling this to Babu. Just go and tell him everything that happened. Tell him that because of an agreement, I had to stand and watch the maids of the two queens fight in the marketplace. And even though I did not wish to become the witness, they threatened me to become their witness. And who am I going to support? I cannot support one queen over the other. So I had no idea what to do. So I had to pretend that I was mad. I had to pretend to be insane or mentally ill, Your Honor. But I really did not try to fool you. I was only trying to save my life. Tell him this way, said Nagendra. And he said, you have to do this only when the king is in a happy mood, when he's in mood for laughter and jokes. So with that advice, Babu one day, when he realized, when he was told that the king was in a happy mood that day, he goes to the king, and the king found him in the merry mood and told him the story. The king laughed a lot and forgave him. And as Nagendra had already advised, the trick worked again. He simply told, this time this was not really a trick, this was just becoming, coming clean and showing some honesty. And king liked it. He liked that this boy had come back to tell him the truth. And of course the whole situation was funny, so he laughed. He laughed a lot, and then he forgave the boy. He said, that's fine, you can leave now. And thus Babu was finally saved. This is now, you can say that Babu has been saved from all the trouble that he could run into with the king and the queens. So this way, you see that a nickel's worth of advice which the merchant, Babu's father, had refused to buy, had landed his son into a trouble that cost him a lot more money. Because of his attempt to get the nickel back, now he shelled out, how much? 1,000 rupees. That's a lot of money compared to that one nickel. Right. Now what? Then the king, who was intrigued by what he had heard of Nagendra in the market, sent for him and asked if he had any more wisdom to sell. Well, the king heard about Nagendra also, because his name had already become what? A buzzword, as everybody was mentioning his name. And now after Babu's incident, king became curious about all this wisdom thing that this boy Nagendra was selling. And the king, he was not somebody who was too proud of himself and his wisdom. He thought, maybe I can buy some wisdom too, if it's still available in that shop. So he sent a servant to Nagendra's shop and he asked Nagendra to come and meet him. So did Nagendra come and meet the king, and the king asked him, well boy, I heard that you are selling wisdom. Is there any wisdom left that you could sell to me? It's a great opportunity for Nagendra, you see. Now it's not just ordinary people trying to buy wisdom from him. It's the king himself, the king of that kingdom himself, who is interested in buying wisdom from Nagendra. Well, the boy said, of course I have plenty to sell, especially to a king. But my fee would be 100,000 rupees. Nagendra said, well, why not? I have plenty of wisdom to sell, especially to a king. That means my wisdom is actually more helpful for a king. And because you're a king, yes, I'm willing to sell some good wisdom, some very helpful wisdom to you. However, the fee that I'm going to charge you will be a lot more than that I charge ordinary people. Yes, you have to pay me 1 lakh rupees. How much did he charge for Babu's father? For Babu, he had charged 500 rupees for piece of advice. But for the king, it's 100,000 rupees. That is 1 lakh rupees, he said. And so Babu, and then the king, the king is king after all. He is not going to have trouble giving 1 lakh rupees to this boy. The king paid him the 100,000 rupees, and the boy gave him a piece of paper on which he had written these words. Right? He received the payment of 1 lakh rupees, and then again on a piece of paper. He used piece of paper for wisdom like this. He gave a piece of paper to the king. And what was written on that piece of paper? These words: think deeply before you do anything. Isn't that really something that we all can apply in our lives? Think deeply before you do anything. Before you do anything, you think twice about that, maybe 3 times. Think deeply. Think well before you do anything. That was the advice that Nagendra gave to the king. Well, is the king going to like this advice? Is he going to use it? Let's see. Now, the king was delighted with the advice that he had. He made it into his motto. He had it embroidered on his pillows and engraved on his cups and plates so that he would not forget it. The king actually liked this advice. Think deeply before you do anything. He said, well, that's really interesting. I want to see it everywhere in my palace, he said. So the pillows and sheets that were used by the king, they were embroidered with these words. So when the king was about to sleep, he would see those words on his pillows or on his bed sheet. Those exact words. Think deeply before you do anything. And the king wanted to see it everywhere. So his plates and other things that he used in the palace, they were all, marked with those words. Those words were engraved on his plates and spoons and everything. So wherever the king just looked in the palace, somewhere there, he found this advice: think deeply before you do anything. So he was very impressed with that advice. Well, the advice was good, the king liked it, so he had it marked everywhere in the palace. But was the advice really helpful to the king? Well, let's see what happens next. Some months later, king fell ill. The minister and one of the queens had been conspiring to get rid of him. So they bribed the doctor and persuaded him to poison the king's medicine. Well, what was happening in the palace was treachery, betrayal. One of the queens, yes, he had two queens. One of those two queens was secretly scheming to have the king murdered. And it's not easy to murder a king. It's not easy to kill a king because he always moves around with guards, right? There are people to protect him. So what she did was, she took the help of the prime minister, and the prime minister agreed to help her because, maybe she bribed him too. She promised him something in return if he successfully got rid of the king. And the prime minister, together with the queen, they bribed the doctor, the royal doctor, the doctor who treated the king, and visited the royal palace frequently to for checkups and to just keep the king healthy. That doctor was bribed by whom? The queen and the prime minister. And in this conspiracy, the doctor joined hands and they decided to kill the king by how? By poisoning him. So it's simple, right? Because the king would trust the doctor all the time, and if the doctor gave him some medicine, some syrup, yes, in a cup, saying that this is medicine and it's for your good, and the king would normally just drink it without thinking twice. So exactly, that's what they did. They poisoned his medicine, and through the doctor they planned to make him consume it, drink it. Then what happens? When the medicine was brought to the king and he lifted the golden cup to his lips, he read the words engraved on it: think deeply before you do anything. Without suspecting anything, he thought about the words, lowered the cup and looked at the medicine in it. The doctor, who was watching all this, felt nervous. Well, the next day, the king was given a cup full of medicine. The doctor said, this is medicine, please drink it. And the king, as usual, he was about to drink it, but then on the cup, yes, it was a silver cup maybe, and then on that cup, those words, remember, he had engraved all that advice given by Nagendra on all those things. So on the cups, the words were visible: think deeply before you do anything. And the king started thinking. Well, he didn't suspect anything. He didn't think that there might be poison in this cup. But he just lowered the cup. He was about to drink it. He had brought it very close to his lips, but he lowered it. He was about to put it down because he just wanted to think about it. Not that he suspected anything. But because the king was looking into the medicine and lowering the cup, the doctor, who was standing very close by, he felt nervous. And that nervousness appeared on his face. It was visible on his face. His guilty conscience made him believe that the king had guessed that his medicine had been poisoned. Well, he was a good man. The doctor, the royal doctor, was a good man, but he had been bribed and maybe threatened by the queen and the prime minister to take part in this conspiracy to kill the king. Now, his guilty conscience, he was feeling very guilty for doing it already. And when the king started to lowering his cup, he suddenly felt that the king had suspected there was poison in the cup. So he started shaking, right? And so while the king was thinking, the doctor threw himself at the feet and confessed to everything and prayed to be forgiven. But the king ordered that the doctor must be arrested. Well, actually the king did not know there was poison in the cup. It was the doctor's behavior that made the king suspected. And the doctor, soon enough, he fell on king's feet and he said, I am very sorry, I have made a grave mistake. I have tried to kill you. There is indeed poison in the cup. Please forgive me, said the doctor. But the king ordered the guards to arrest the doctor. Then he sent for the minister and the queen and insisted that they drink the poison in his cup. They too fell at his feet and begged for mercy. He ordered them to be hanged and he banished the doctor from the kingdom. He made Nagendra his minister and honored him with wealth. And then he asked the guards to go and bring the queen and the prime minister, because the doctor had told the king everything. Yes, they were the ones who had forced him to put poison in the medicine. So the king ordered the guards to bring the prime minister and the queen to the court. And then they were brought, and he said, drink this medicine that you were trying to make me drink. And they refused because they knew there was poison in it. Why would they drink it? Instead, they fell at his feet, both the prime minister and the queen. They begged for mercy, but the king did not want to take any more chances with them. And for the crime they had committed, they deserved the death punishment. So he ordered death penalty for both the prime minister and the queen. They were hanged to death. Yes, they were given the death punishment, which was a good decision on the part of the king. And what about the doctor? He did not kill him. He did not have him hanged. He did not pronounce the death punishment for him. Instead, he asked him to leave his kingdom. Banished means he will never again enter that kingdom. He would never again enter in that area ruled by the king. So he was thrown out of that area. He was thrown out of that kingdom. Well, now Nagendra's advice had helped king to save his life. So he knew that Nagendra would be a perfect person to sit in the prime minister's chair. So he invited Nagendra to become his prime minister, which Nagendra happily accepted. And thus Nagendra's, how he started with a small shop with nothing in the shop, just some paper, pen and ink, and how he had, with his wisdom, won the hearts of the people, including that of the king. And then that helped him become the prime minister of the king. And he became very rich. He got very wealthy. So this is the story of the boy who sold wisdom. A very interesting story indeed, but as usual you have to pay attention to the language aspect, learn the pronunciation of words and also their meanings, remember their spellings, and go through the story again and again, read the lines. And if you have any clarifications, if you need any help in understanding anything, you can reach me on my WhatsApp number. We will take up some other topic in the next class.